Welcome to the session 10 on sales competencies. Last week, we carried out the session 9 where we discussed on selecting your own sales team. This is the program for creating effective and efficient sales systems and teams that win. This is being brought to you by METL Global Perspectives, www.metl.in. Sales competency. Competency is a set of observable characteristics that enable and improve efficiency of performance of a job by an individual. The stress here is on the word observable. So it's not about understanding or interacting. It is something which one can see, define, and trap. This is role specific. So a salesperson has different set of competencies than a sales manager, and a sales head has a different set of competency than the sales manager. Depending on the role and responsibility, these competencies are figured out, and the role holder has to demonstrate those on the job. A competent role holder will be able to demonstrate that competency at a much higher level, whereas a novice or someone who's learning that particular role will be demonstrating that at a lesser level. Also, the competency keeps changing based on the sales environment, as we discussed in the session before. Depending on the sales environment, whether it's a transactional, consultative, or collaborative sale, the nature of the competency keeps changing. One can say that these are my frontline salespeople, but for these three different types of sales environments and sales systems, the competencies will be very different. Using competencies. The precursor to defining the sales competency is the sales process and the sales environment. Actually, the sales process, sales environment, and the sales competency. These three things keep on going through together. So as an organization is creating the sales process, the roles, and understanding with clarity the sales environment that they want to operate on, it's very important for them to also define the sales competencies. Now, assume an organization which is into B2C in a big way, and they have got a large distribution force. Now they then decide that we will go away from B2C in a structured manner and become an e-commerce based organization. Now if that happens, the entire competency of the sales force changes. That is important to keep in mind, and therefore the sales environment and the way you want to do your sales is very crucial to define. Once these are done, the work related to sales competencies can start. There are three things that are needed when it comes to competencies. Identifying them. How are you going to figure those out? How do you identify them? This we will talk on later. Assessing them. Once having identified, how do you assess the individuals on the levels of competency that they have demonstrated? Or you think that after training, they might be able to demonstrate. So this is the assessment side of the competency. Even for some companies use competencies to grade them for the assessments, for the promotions and all also. Some companies are very clear that competencies are to be used only for the development and not for the reward and recognition side of the equation. And the third is developing them. How do you develop people in a structured manner so that they achieve the higher order of competencies? Identifying competencies. Identifying competencies needs understanding the nature of work to be carried out in the field, the capabilities needed to do that, and the differentiating capabilities to do that very well. Differentiating capabilities are the ones that set aside the winners from the average salespeople. It needs to be stated that this differentiating capability has to be observed. If you ask two individuals who are sitting, one is average performer and one is a winner, on how are they going about their sales function, it's not about listening to them or interviewing them in the room or trying to figure that out. It's about going with them in the field and observing them when they are doing the job. That is very important to figure out the competencies well. Interviewing endless amount of interviews and then putting up a chart, that's okay. That's a first cut job to be done. But what's most important is to review and validate whether these 10 are whatever competencies that have been discussed in the room are correct or not by observation. The way to do so is to observe the salesperson who do well in their client interactions and then closely observe them who consistently do very well. Identify the difference between the two and find out the characteristics that define them both. Interview other salespeople based on these findings to validate the findings. Distilling all of these will create your differentiating competencies. For instance, one can always say in leadership there is empathy is a competency, and then they define it, or they will say integrity is a value and they define it. But what's important is that how are the leaders differentiating these capabilities or demonstrating that in the field? If they talk about it but don't demonstrate it, then it's no point doing this whole exercise. It's very important, therefore, to understand the letter and spirit behind this and do the whole thing entirely. Behavioral indicators. Once the indicators are identified, they are bunched together and these become the behavioral indicators for the competency. Group all the similar behaviors together and give them a label. It is important to take them and place them in an ascending order from essential to demonstrated by experts only. What organizations do is to have 5 level scale from essential to demonstrated by experts, and in these 5 level scales they will have multiple levels of indicators to identify them. Now, what is important is that uh, these indicators have to be observable in nature. So they should not be very difficult to spot or to find out. It has to be observed and it has to be easily understood at workplace. So that is critical and that to be kept in mind. Instances differentiating competencies. For instance, when I was doing this work for a client, I figured out the best salesman did not bother much on going for individual clients on one is to one. Instead, he developed networks with other professionals who were already working with few clients and tapped them instead. So instead of going one on one, he will go and tie up with someone who has a network of 5, 10, 20 clients. And through that, he would work. So that would give him access. And because this individual already has a network, the trust component was established easily. In another instance, the salesperson used to be available for responding to client queries any time of the day or night. And the salesperson in this case was constantly building networks that would help the client and kept introducing the client to those networks. So, and this salesperson was always available for any kind of query that a client might need to have. So whether it be settling down in a particular area, whether it be admission to a school, or getting to know the area well, or getting the contact of the passport office for doing some work, this person always had the information and he would be going out of his way to get it for the client. And by doing this individual was always in the ready recall of the clients, and there wasn't too much of work that he had to do to get new prospects going. His network was always brimming. So something which always a salesperson looks for is to have a sales funnel which is always full of prospects. Just imagine, by doing this work, whether it be a query on a hospital, whether it be a query on a doctor, whether it be a pediatrician, whether it be a school, whether it be a market, whether it be a good place to find a particular product, the most recommended place for a dinner with family, most recommended place for a night out with friends, everything he would know. And he was the first point of recall for most of his clients, and that's what kept him there always. Categories of competencies. Competencies can be categorized into knowledge, skills, and attitude or behavioral. An instance of knowledge competency can be the ability to state benefits of the offering in various customer scenarios or create offerings for a particular client and a client situation. This can be given the label of solution creation or product understanding. A skill competency can be to interact with the customer so as to maintain the interest and propose initial innovative solutions. This can be labeled as influencing and persuading skills or customer communication skills. Behavioral competency or attitude, as we talked of, can be to demonstrate optimism during account pursuits and learn from every interaction to refine the capability. This can be labeled as staying optimistic or persistent or learnability. So it's very important to have all of these three types of competencies together, listed, created, so that you have a complete view of what the salesperson who's executing that particular role, or the sales manager, or the sales head, you have a complete view on what that individual is going to be like. No ambiguity. A competency once identified is considered well written if it is understood in the same way by everyone involved. 7 to 8 competencies for a specific role are good enough indicators. If people who are assessing the salesperson do so without a common understanding, then incorrect gradation would take place and the model would be contested. So the way once it is listed, and if there are 5 salespeople and you have got 3 assessors who are basically questioning them, discussing with them, and identifying their competency levels, after the assessment, there should not be too much difference in the understanding of these 3 assessors, because that is the proof that the competency table, the way it has been written, has been perfectly framed. However, in most of the cases, there are disagreements and there are deviations between the scores given by the assessors. In that case, it's important to again go back to the competency table and rewrite that particular indicator in a way so that it's commonly understood. So this does take a little bit of iteration, and go through with the iteration, because that produces a document which is highly scalable in nature over time. Writing the competencies. So how does a competency table, once you have identified the competencies, how do they look like? One of the ways to do this is that you keep on giving questions to the salespeople and saying that here is a client situation, what will you do? And let them keep writing whatever comes to their mind. Now, when you have collected all this, you take them back with you, and you can then keep that as the one set of data set that you have. Second is observation of the field, and therefore that data set that you see as what the uh, differentiating competencies, what were they like. And the third data set is when you review some literature on a particular competency and try to see that the what you have done is exhaustive. Once you have done all these three, for every competency identified, like we talked of learnability or optimism or customer communication or innovative solution capability, every competency identified like this is the label. Now, with that, for helping the assessor, you give an instance of a good example, for example, a good instance. So, why would you say that this is well demonstrated? You'll write that statement. Then you will write needs to be improved upon. Then what is that particular statement? So these are 2 actual instances from the field that has been observed that are put there. After that, there are 5 levels of behavioral indicators that you capture. Level 1 is for the novice and level 5 is for the expert, the one who does that very well. Under this level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will have 3 or 4 indicators which can be used. Can be 2 indicators, can be even 1 if it is only 1. So what's important is that you capture the gradation here, the level 1 to level 5. For instance, one who is talking of innovative solutions, level 1 can be sticks to the standard offering that is defined, sticks to offer or considers offerings that have been created by others and uses that to create the offering for the client. Whereas the level 5 can be works together with the client to create a new offering, which is absolutely a change in process for the client as well, and leads to significant advantage and improvement for both. So that is level 5. Now between this level 1 and level 5, you can have 3 more gradations, or else you can have level 1, level 2, level 3. That is also good enough. Role specificity of competencies. The competencies for sales manager and the sales head will be different than that of the salesperson, as the job description is very different. However, a competency like learnability will be there for all of them. Optimism will be there for all of them. Finding out new solutions that work for the client will be there for all of them. So the levels are different, but some of the competencies are such that they have to be demonstrated by everyone across every role. However, they all will be a part of the sales process, maybe at different stages. Every role holder is a part of the sales process, and based on where they have to play the role, the competencies have to be defined accordingly. Once the sales competencies are defined, and the sales force has to be evaluated objectively and sent for developmental interventions depending on where they are lacking, where they want support, all these interventions can be figured out. The triad of sales process, sales environment, sales competencies are crucial for sales success. The moment you get these three together, for the entire sales organization, not only for the salesperson, for the entire sales organization, then you have been able to define a complete sales organization well. And if you can implement that well, you will have your winning sales teams and sales systems. Implementing competencies. Once the sales environment has been defined, the sales team has been selected based on identified competencies, trained to carry out the work as per the guidelines of the organization, regularly assessed and provided with structured feedback to help them develop and perform at the job. The developmental interventions can be many. They can be classroom based intervention so that the individual can discuss and learn that way. The developmental intervention can be an online program that the salesperson goes through if it is a pure knowledge based one. Developmental intervention can be walking together at work. It's like on the job coaching where a better salesperson can guide a new recruit, or the supervisor can guide all of them depending on how he wants to see that. It is important that this is done in a developmental manner and not in a reward and recognition kind of format. So the more motivated your sales force is, and the more the system helps them in performing better, they will be able to do their job well. That is necessary to be understood. So implementing competencies and systems helps you pull up the level of your sales force totally, dramatically, and that goes a long way to secure the kind of performance that you want out of them. Evolve your sales a bit with me every week. What are your sales competencies? How many roles have you carried it out for? What have you done to carry out a fair assessment? What is the developmental plan? In case of queries, message me at saugata@metl.in. Next week, we will be discussing on session 11, which is engaging with your audience. Till then, happy selling. The objective of this program is to help you have a sales team that is motivated and a systems that actually help you succeed. Thank you.